You're listening to Girls with Grafts, a burn community podcast created by Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, a leading nonprofit dedicated to supporting the burn community. In this podcast, we'll talk with burn survivors, share resources to help with supporting and improving burn recovery, and discuss how to prevent burn injuries. Here are your hosts, burn survivors and Phoenix Society's marketing team, Amber Wilcox and Rachel Kudlak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Girls with Grafts. I am Rachel Kudlak. I'm one of the hosts of the show. And today, unfortunately, I will not be joined by my lovely co-host, Amber Wilcox. But I'm so excited to welcome on to today's guest. So before I introduce her, I would just want to give a quick shout out to today's podcast partner. And today's podcast is powered by Allosource. Allosource is one of the largest human tissue providers, honoring tissue donors by creating innovative skin allografts to help burn surgeons and heal patients. So we thank Allosource for their ongoing partnership with Phoenix Society. And without further ado, I'd love to welcome on today's guest. So today we are welcoming on Rebecca Garber, who is a nurse practitioner for the HCA HealthONE Swedish Burn and Reconstructive Center in Englewood, Colorado. She has cared for burn-injured patients for more than 25 years. Rebecca works closely with the Phoenix SOAR peer supporters of her program, and she is passionate about supporting this invaluable resource and training for future peer supporters. So thank you so much for joining me today, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rachel, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, to get started, I would just love to learn a little bit more about you, especially your career in burn care and specifically how you first got involved in helping burn survivors.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I have been a burn nurse for a while. I started my training and schooling was out in Boston, and I was at the Mass General Hospital Burn Center. And when I was looking for jobs in nursing, I was inspired to take care of patients who were really sick and originally sought out a position on the transplant unit, but they were fully staffed and the manager was manager of burns. And he said, if you want to take care of some pretty sick patients, and you should try the burn center. And so that's how it all started. And then within my first year of burn nursing, we had the Rhode Island Station Club fire in Warwick, Rhode Island. That was 2003. And I got to see firsthand how burn teams manage disasters, and watching like the physicians and provider teams stabilize patients over the course of a few days, and then work on their surgeries, and then subsequently down the road reconstruction. And I appreciated the teamwork from the medical standpoint, and I was very interested in the medicine and surgical interventions I was observing, but also was just fell in love with this patient population and learned very quickly how resilient burn survivors are, and how much they have to overcome to return to life and forevermore. Burn survivors have been my people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did not know that you were originally connected to Boston and Mass General. I was treated at Shriners in Boston, so maybe we had a little overlap of our time there.
Oh, perhaps.
No, that's great. So I guess, how did you get out to Colorado, and really what kept you in, the burn care field, and why did you stay for over 25 years now?
So when I graduated from graduate school, my husband and I were looking at our options and decided for his job opportunities, we ended up moving to Colorado in 2003 and have been here ever since. And I continued, it was just ingrained in me that I wanted to pursue burn care. And so I looked at my options and ended up in a smaller burn program in northern Colorado called Western States Burn Center, where I spent nearly 20 years working with that program before transitioning to my current role. And I don't know. I mean, in the role with that burn program, like I said, we were a little bit smaller, and there was just the surgeon and myself, or the surgeons and myself. We didn't have like a robust medical team. And so I got involved in so many different aspects than just patient care. I got to do a lot of programmatic things and education and program development, but that also involved starting our first support group was, I think it was in 2010-ish, and recognizing the need for having a support group for our patients and our survivors and their families. And so shortly thereafter, like, I don't know, maybe a year later, we started doing bedside visitations and had some regular burn survivors who were willing to share their stories and offer hope to our current patients. And so it went. And it was not until, I think, more like 2019 that we became a SOAR program, and then things went from there. But I've always been passionate about taking care of burn patients. They're my favorite, and they're the only group of patients and survivors that I've managed in my career.
I love that. Well, I want to take a quick step back and just, obviously, I said that you're a nurse practitioner, but can you talk a little bit more about, I guess, how a nurse practitioner, the role it plays on the burn care team, and, especially in the hospital, and just talk us a little bit more through that?
Sure, you bet. So a nurse practitioner is a master or doctor prepared healthcare provider. And as such, we work collaboratively with our physician peers, as well as with physician assistants as part of the provider team. In the hospital setting, depending on the burn center's division of labor, nurse practitioners can be seen in the clinic. They can be seen on the inpatient unit. They can assist with surgery and surgical intervention. Really can be utilized in any way that a patient might encounter a healthcare provider within the burn program. And I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know you kind of talked about that, like, emotional side of, obviously caring for burn survivors and their families. So how do you balance that in terms of your, the physical side of healing, and also supporting your patients emotionally as well?
Well, I think I have learned so much over the years, and I continue to learn in all of my interactions truly with my survivors. But just asking the questions and understanding. I mean, my first experiences really were inpatient and bedside, and experiencing, how a brand new patient can have fear and sadness and anger, or any combination of these things, just, moving through all of the emotions over time, and learning how to support the individuals in the burn center. And then as time goes on, you translate that, into the outpatient setting, and you start to experience patients who are having acute stress reactions versus post-traumatic stress reactions, and how to support them where they're at. And, and with the development of the SOAR program or its implementation, maybe for my burn center, and becoming aware of all the resources available, it's, been amazing to provide those opportunities to recognize when it's needed, and then say, hey, how about we try some peer support, or let's get you engaged in a support group, or, here's the toolkit from the Phoenix Society, and this might be of help to you. And just kind of navigating depending on what's presented to me in the various settings.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, tell us a little bit more too about how you first got connected with Phoenix Society and the Phoenix SOAR program.
Yeah. So I think, like I said, in my old burn center, I think we became a SOAR program around 2019, and my first survivors went through in like 2020 through the training. And so, like I said, we had done a lot of peer support already, but to be kind of part of our overall Phoenix Society program was around that time. And then continued ever since that time to connect peer supporters, whether in person or virtually, to current patients and their family members. And then I became a peer support trainer at least 5 years ago. I'm not really sure. I love it. I love meeting so many new survivors. I love the energy that they bring and the desire to offer hope and to help newer survivors navigating their recovery processes. And so I just enjoy this whole piece of things for sure.
No, I love it. Well, obviously you get to interact with a lot of our new peer supporters, but we often have folks who are listening, whether they're a survivor themselves or a family member, and they want to give back and get more involved, but maybe they're not sure if they're ready or not. So can you just maybe talk us through a little bit of, what you would tell survivors who are considering becoming a peer supporter, or any advice you'd want to share with them?
I think if anybody's interested in learning about peer support, I would direct them to a support group, a virtual support group. Just hear what peer support is like and what the kinds of questions that are asked of you. And I think it's good for somebody considering it to hear how raw it can be at times, kind of to do a self-check. Am I ready to do this? And kind of do that self-reflection. And then if they feel good about it, then I would encourage them to talk to their local burn center coordinator to, again, bring up the question, do you think, here's my story, if they don't know this coordinator, or do you think I'm ready? And just start having those conversations.
And maybe on the flip side too, for, our other burn care professionals who are listening, do you have any advice for them? Or, maybe they want to start a Phoenix SOAR program or any peer support program, whether it's Phoenix SOAR or not, what advice you'd want to give to them?
The experience of observing peer support is so powerful. We all know what it's like to have a new patient and family, and all the information coming at them and the ongoing surgeries and therapies, and to have a survivor be able to meet with this family and patient to kind of just shed light, offer a glimmer of hope, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that this person was able to overcome their injuries, and here's some ideas that they might have to help this patient in this moment with this challenge. I mean, that's so powerful, and it's so effective at reducing stress and relieving anxiety over what's to come. And I think I just can't express how valuable it is a service to offer for your patients and families.
And I know another thing that, sometimes, the care team struggle with is getting a survivor to meet with a peer supporter. So how do you maybe approach a situation if you really think someone could get a lot of value from meeting with a peer supporter, but maybe they are a little hesitant or just don't feel quite ready for that? How do you approach that situation?
I often encourage them to start by logging into the Phoenix Society's support groups online, going to the community calendar and just listening. They don't have to turn on their camera. They don't have to say anything, but just to hear what's happening is kind of like step one. And then following up with them to see how that experience went. And like my social worker can follow up too. And then see if they're interested for the more one-on-one interactions. But sometimes people aren't ready. And all you can do is just continue to ask and check in their follow-up appointments. And Perhaps sometime in the future they will be ready, and we have lots to offer when they are.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I know. I think that's one of the great things, that came out of, the COVID years was all the virtual opportunities that there are now. Because sometimes that can be a lot less intimidating, just joining virtually and even keeping your camera off and not even feeling like you need to share your story, but just sitting there and listening to others can be really powerful too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Do you often see that maybe the family members or friends are more open to getting that peer support early on? Or I guess I know sometimes those folks often they're just wanting obviously to find any ways to support the survivor in their life, but they also need, that peer support and that connection as well.
Yes. Because, sometimes the patient themselves is still on a breathing machine in the ICU. And that can be the case for, a long period of time. And in the meantime, the family is trying to understand how this is going to go and what is happening to their person. And I think it's incredibly helpful to connect them with peer supporters and peer supporter burn survivors, as well as peer supporter family members, because we have both available.
Mm-hmm.
And that resource is hugely helpful. And then as their loved one wakes up, the family members empowered with some knowledge that they might be able to start answering those questions or understanding how their loved one is responding in the moment to things that are happening to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a really great point. Well, in all of your time with Phoenix SOAR, I know you said you're passionate about training other peer supporters, but is there like a particular moment, whether it's a visit or maybe something during one of the trainings that really stays with you? It's just as a great reminder to you of the power of the program.
Well, I really appreciate, for me personally, like meeting all of these burn survivors and all across the country, and hearing all the stories and the stories of recovery and perseverance and return to life, and then this kind of desire to give back. And in every peer support encounter, I always take something away, or if I attend a support group or something, like, for me, I'll learn something that was said that might make me a better practitioner to inform a burn survivor who's newly leaving the burn center, or reintegration, getting back to work or school, or just something that I can stick in my bag of tools that can be of help, so that if somebody says something to me along those lines, I can recall what this survivor said. And so I professionally gain so much from it, and just personally enjoy the experience. It's just so rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, and I think, I want to talk a little bit too about Phoenix World Burn Congress, and I'm sure some of those sentiments are, for that event as well. The hospital staff, the professionals can get so much for their own practice just by hearing and connecting with other survivors and loved ones too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same idea, where just hearing burn survivor stories, whether good or bad, taking something away from all of those encounters and stories, and to make us better providers, to make us more compassionate, and remind us of aspects of care, and how we can always do better. We can always learn, and we can always grow from that. But I think it's really cool too at World Burn Congress is watching my own survivors that I brought, really bloom. They are hearing all these stories. They're in this wonderful space that's safe, and just gaining confidence and seeing, that glimmer of hope, and then also just kind of gaining confidence, or maybe learning something new. Somebody with hand injuries who really hasn't been doing very much with their hands that they used to do, and then hanging out with a bunch of other burn survivors who have similar hand injuries, and doing something like mini golf or going to throw darts or whatever it is, and just empowering them to know that they can figure out how to do the things they love. They just might have to adapt, and learning that from others. And it's just such an amazing opportunity to see your people grow.
For sure. Yeah, that's such a good point too, of like those adaptations that maybe you just have to learn how to do something a little bit differently. I know one of our board members, Tony Gonzalez, met with a survivor in the hospital, Jamie. And Jamie used to love to golf, and so did Tony. But during, the initial injury and that healing, Jamie didn't think he'd ever be able to golf again. And Tony came in and, told him about how he goes golfing all the time, and just, seeing like the life after the injury, and learning, that you can do all the things you love, but you just might have to do them a little bit differently. And, and I think, seeing folks be able to do that versus just being told that you'll be able to do that again, but actually seeing it in action can change, can really make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I know, I've shared on the podcast numerous times how I was a camp kid, and I remember like my counselors every year, like me going back and just talking about that same idea of like seeing me bloom and like grow up, and just, the changes year after year, or whether it's even just in a few days, whether it's at camp or World Burn or another event, can make a huge impact in just a few short days.
I think it's rewarding for the survivors and their families, but it's so rewarding for the healthcare providers too, to see the growth and to see the changes. It's what it's all about.
Well, can you just tell me a little bit more about when your first Phoenix SOAR Burn Congress was, and just tell us a little bit more about how, just attending that event?
Yeah. My first one was last year. My first in person. I did the one that was virtual during COVID, but in person was fabulous. Went with a handful of people and just enjoyed connecting with this community. I mean, the burn community is very small, and so a lot of the people present, and so it's just. It was a wonderful opportunity. I look forward to coming back and doing it again and bringing more survivors with me. It was incredible.
Yeah. Well, and what, I guess, would you want other professionals to know about why they should attend? I know we touched on this a little bit, but, we often hear like, hospitals want to send survivors and caregivers, of course, to attend, but that it can also be really impactful and rewarding for the burn care professionals as well. So what would you maybe want, another professional to know of why they should attend our big one in 2027?
Well, we talked about what professionals gain from listening to our survivors share their experiences. But I think, if you're the SOAR coordinator, if you are heavily involved in kind of the outpatient or reintegration portion of your program, there's just so much to learn from this space, and lots of educational opportunities, as well as the connections with all of the peer supporters. And so I think I also think even the nursing staff or any of the inpatient staff would also benefit from being there to have this vision of care after the burn center, to learn, how it goes after they say goodbye to the patient from the inpatient setting, to kind of complete the continuum of care for our patients. I think it's a helpful perspective to have.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, was there a moment, or maybe any, just whether maybe it was a session or something, maybe at open mic or something like that at last year's Congress, that really stood out to you that you won't ever forget?
Well, I think it was a couple of those personal moments with my people, in particular, that were meaningful, seeing growth and, adapting so that they might be able to enjoy parts of their life that were missing since their injury, gaining confidence to own what happened to them, and moving forward from there. Those were very meaningful things for me, to carry away from that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know we touched on this too with, World Burn and Phoenix SOAR, and hearing those survivor stories and seeing survivors bloom and thrive after an injury. But I guess, can you talk a little bit more about maybe how both of those programs really have changed maybe the way you practice, or just changed the way you help support and treat patients, or just kind of some of those takeaways that, you live day to day, even after the event is over, after the peer support visit's done?
Well, we have a pretty well-oiled machine for screening, for mental health. And, when red flags come up to me in my clinical setting, I am able to ask the questions and facilitate peer support or support groups or wherever we're at. And I think a helpful thing that I took away from it is the Journey Forward program, and my burn center continues to consider this program for our patients, outpatients, and that was helpful to hear the information about that and consider how it would work. And, part of the beauty of being going to these conferences is hearing from other professionals in their burn centers how they make different aspects of programs work, things that work, things that don't work, so that you might be able to better apply it in your own program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, for maybe whether it's a SOAR coordinator or even just another, professional who's, I know Phoenix SOAR Burn Congress 2027 seems like a long time away, but it'll be here before we know it. So do you have any tips maybe for, I guess, both professionals who are attending, for them, of things that maybe they should know before the conference? And on the flip side, like how they could, if they're bringing a group of survivors from their hospital, how they can prepare the survivors too for attending the event?
I think preparing survivors, ideally, you can connect new people going with perhaps survivors that have been before who might be going again, and having kind of a buddy to check in with and stuff. And as a coordinator, bringing a group of survivors, making sure that there are touch points, every day, to just check in with all of your survivors and make sure that everybody is having a positive response to being there and addressing anything otherwise, and continuing to be of support for our survivors. For the professional, just attending with an open mind and an open heart, and hopefully gaining some of these insights from our survivors. And I mean, you can't not have a wonderful time. It's very uplifting and heartwarming, and it's a great experience.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think the one great thing about Phoenix SOAR Burn Congress too is that it is a really good mixture of this, like, I don't know if this is the right word to describe it, but like the heavy healing of like the emotional and really diving deep. I know every year I always get emotional, whether it's like at a keynote or at the open mic. There's like always a moment where it really hits me. And I stay in that moment, but then, by the end of the day, I'm having like fun again and like enjoying and like just really loving the conference. Like I don't want to say there's like bad moments, but there's definitely moments that are heavier, but I definitely think it's a good mixture of having and allowing space for those moments, but also being able to just, have fun with your peers and the burn survivor community.
Absolutely. I agree. I don't think anybody doesn't shed a tear at some part of the conference.
I know. It's always funny because I know it's going to happen every year, but obviously, I'm running around and helping with like a lot of behind the scenes work. And then I think all of a sudden I like actually like sit down and like to really listen to like the open mic stories. And then it just is like, I don't have like work brain on. I just have like my survivor like brain on. And then that's like, it always hits me. There's always a time. Can't get away from it. Even if I try not to cry in front of all my coworkers, it always happens at least once.
That's right. Well, I can think of another thing at this past World Burn Congress was just connecting with my other local burn center team and connecting to create a greater community support group for our area. And so that was really rewarding too, was just, recognizing that we have this, huge pool of burn survivors in this area and just trying to create a space with them for community support in person again. And so not every burn center has the luxury of having in-person support groups, frequently, and sometimes it's virtual. And so it's really been great to be a part of pulling this together for our community here. And it's just really ramping up, but it started right there at World Burn Congress. So,
yeah, no, that's such a great point too. And, for some survivors, their burn centers are hours and hours away, and some of them are closer. And so, that is like another powerful thing that can happen at World Burn, whether, as professionals, you're getting connected with other local professionals, or even for the survivors too, even finding out about a local community that is near you that maybe you had no idea that existed of, obviously Phoenix World Burn Congress is a big event, but we want that magic to, last all year long. And even outside of the conference that, we want folks to, find those connections. And I know a lot of times folks also, reference the conference as a family reunion too, of like you get together with, whether they're local to you or, your friends from across the country, that you get to all meet back up and see each other at the event.
I absolutely can see that being the case for sure. Yeah.
Well, I do want to just talk a little bit too about self-care, especially in the burn care world. I know, obviously, to your point, and we were talking earlier about the care that you give patients and survivors and their families, whether it's, even during the initial healing or long after the injury. But how do you care for yourself and, take the time you need, even when, the work can feel really heavy in the moment?
Well, when work is heavy in the moment, you lean on your team and your staff collectively. It does absolutely take a team of people to care for our patients every day, and we're in it together. And so we feel any, stress like that together. And, and I do my best for my people every day. And, in doing so, I hope that at the end of my shift, somebody might feel better for the care that I've provided. It's always been a goal since I was a nurse on day one. And, and then I balance that with my family and time away and making sure to get out in the fresh air and taking a walk and sunshine and just reconnecting in ways that are important. And that's advice that I give to my survivors as well, is, make sure you go for a walk or just sit outside and just, listen to the birds or whatever it is, where to help find peace is important, to continue that balance so that you don't get burned out or emotionally unavailable to continue to care for your patients and for your own life, for your own family.
For sure. No, it's great advice for literally everyone. And, one thing I find interesting too, whether, I'm sure you've attended like the American Burn Association's annual meeting and some of those other conferences of with burn care, it's interesting because you see patients and survivors for not just their initial injury. You know, we stay connected with our burn centers over the course of our healing, which can be years. And that you can go back and, you know, see, you know, your patients thrive after their injury. But one other thing that really stood out to me too was that, you know, we have folks like you, Rebecca, who have been in the burn care field for 25 years, but then there's also a ton of new nurses and new professionals in burn care. So do you have any tips or anything you'd want those new nurses and new professionals in the field to know?
That this is the best job ever. So I teach at my local community nursing programs, and I love personally teaching nursing students. Are my favorite audience, because I remember the first lecture that I heard about burns, and it was incredibly inspiring to me. And then I was just teaching yesterday, and a gentleman was a student of mine from last year, who's now a trained burn ICU nurse and was taking advanced burn life support. And so for me, it has come full circle, and that kind of a story has happened a few times. And so I think that this population is very challenging. It's challenging intellectually, professionally, medically, for all of the, you know, the intensive needs potentially of our patients, along with the surgical interventions and the whole burn center picture, burn program, burn care. And then it can be something that emotionally can be super challenging, and just to remember to keep yourself grounded and to lean on your team, and to, as you navigate different scenarios, just checking in with yourself and making sure that you're doing okay with it. But it's just so rewarding, and I wouldn't change a thing about what I've done.
No, that's amazing. Well, you sure are busy. I can't believe all the ways you're involved. I know you're involved with a ton with Phoenix Society, and you also teach and, you know, obviously have your work, your day to day. So I give you props for, you know, giving back and being as involved as you are, because I know it can be a lot for sure at times.
It can. Thank you. Yep. I do enjoy it.
Well, I know we're coming up on our time, so I just have a few more quick questions, but
Sure.
what, you know, gives you a hope about, you know, whether it's Phoenix SOAR and where that program's going, or just in burn care in general? What kind of, you know, what are you excited about? What gives you hope for the future?
Well, I in 25 years of seeing, you know, how we manage burns from the medical side, it's really been great, cool, interesting to see how science has caught up or continues to evolve, and all of the products that are available now for wound healing and alternatives to skin grafts, and the success of what we can do to improve survivorship, and as well as, you know, the physical healing as well as the emotional healing. And it's just continues to evolve and change, and that's exciting. You know, it's fun to be a part of that process. There's gonna, you know, unfortunately there will continue to be burn patients that need our services, and we can continue a prevention effort. Like, I really enjoy providing talks to industry workers, like electrical, rural electric company kind of audiences, or to oil and gas workers, to remind them, maybe scare them a little bit with, you know, what can happen if you come to a burn center, to remind them to follow their safety protocols and wear their safety gear. And so there's going to forever be a need to continue to provide education, you know, and I've also enjoyed working nationally on prevention efforts. And again, something else that the need to advocate nationally to continue to support the needs of our community will forever be there. But It was fun. I was on an ABA government affairs committee, and we worked several years on getting, so it's a gas can that you would use to pour into your lawnmower. And the issue was that if there was an ignition outside of the can, the flame could travel back into the can and the can could explode. And so this was an issue, and learned that in industry, they require that a little mesh sieve be placed in the nozzle of these gas cans, but it wasn't required for consumers, for the rest of us non-industry folks using gas containers. And so I think it was about 8 years or so of traveling to Capitol Hill and sharing information about burns and why it's so important to have this placed in all gas cans, and we finally got it passed. And so it's just another way to give back to this community is in prevention and advocacy efforts like that one.
No, that's amazing that it finally got passed. And I know, we have a ton of survivors who, want to give back. And obviously Phoenix SOAR is one way to give back, but becoming an advocate and, sharing your story and advocating for safety measures, prevention. I know we take part in a ton of different awareness weeks for that reason. And, hate to say it, but, oftentimes people think it'll never happen to them until it does. So there's a reason why we need to go out and share our stories and share our voices to make a difference.
I think it's so effective. And in the years that we were doing those Capitol visits, we used to bring survivors because hearing firsthand for those that feel comfortable sharing is so important to further the message of all the rest of us who are advocating for it. So if you're one of those people partnering with your burn center for, whatever the position is that you're trying to get support for is incredibly helpful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One, to your point earlier too, I just want to highlight exactly what you said of, just even the changes. I'm coming up on almost 30 years of being a survivor. And even like you said earlier with like the different products and technologies that have just changed since I've been a burn survivor. I can only imagine what they're going to be like in another 25, 30 years down the road. So that's always one of my favorite things too, about whether it's at World Burn or at one of the ABA conferences, is like just seeing all the new products. I don't have the medical background, but it is fun for me to at least see and get an idea of what they do these days.
Yeah. It's really crazy. It's awesome.
For sure. Well, I know we're coming up on our time, and I do have 2 final questions for you. But before I ask you those, I just wanted to open it up and see if there was anything else you wanted to make sure you shared with our listeners today.
Well, I think we talked about a lot. I also enjoy volunteering with the Phoenix Society board program committee, and it's just another way as a health professional to give back. And so in this particular role, from the perspective of outpatient care, because that's what I do now, is predominantly outpatient care, supporting kind of the review of our website through the Phoenix Society, and reviewing all of the resources that are available and making sure that information is still current, or if we need to update or come up with new topics, or, put to rest old topics that aren't really an issue anymore. And, so there's, just different ways to become involved if you're so inspired to do so.
No, I so appreciate the entire program board committee and all of the work you guys have been helping Sandra and myself with. I know it's so much work looking at all of those resources, but it's amazing that we have so many offerings. But I so appreciate the team's expertise and time in reviewing those and editing those and making sure that when survivors or caregivers are looking for a resource on laser or itch or whatever it may be, that we have the most updated and most accurate information available. So I so appreciate your time on that, Rebecca, as well as the rest of the committee as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. I enjoy it for sure.
Sounds like you like to stay busy. So I'll keep that in mind when I have future needs and support requests. I'll be sending those directly your way.
I think my biggest professional flaw is I am not really able to say no. I like to help. I like to be busy and and help out wherever I can.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like today, taking time for the podcast. So I appreciate all that you do. Well, I promise I won't take up too much more of your time, and I'll wrap up with our 2 final questions. So the first one that we are asking on the season is, what's a small win that you're celebrating right now? It can be related to burn care, it can be personal, whatever you want to share.
A small win. Well, this is my first podcast, so I will take that. And I'm honored that you guys asked me to do this. So that's fun.
That is awesome. Yeah, we try to make it easy on our guests. So I hope today was easy for you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, it is time for our final question, which is our Phoenix partner question today, sponsored by Allosaurus. So their question is, if someone listening is in the hardest part of their journey today, what would you want them to hear?
Oh, I'd want them to hear, to take the step to just ask for the support that they need. So to talk to their loved ones, to talk with their burn team, and to just say one thing out loud. And it can start a spiral of help and that can come their way that can only make hopefully things better. And so it's just taking that first step of asking. And there's, as we've talked about, a lot that we can do to help the journey become better.
Definitely. Well, thank you again so much, Rebecca, for joining me on the podcast today. I so appreciate it. And I know you're busy, so I appreciate you taking the time and sharing, stories and advice and tips with our listeners. So I appreciate it so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel, for spending your hour with me, and to all of you who are listening. It's a fun opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Yeah. Have a good day.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Girls with Grafts. If you are enjoying this content, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.